All right, we're reading Chapter 5, Welding Equipment and Welding Cutting Equipment, Section 1. Well, we're just going to read Section 1 tonight. Oxyacetylene Welding Equipment. All right, general. The equipment used for oxyacetylene welding consists of the source of the oxygen, source of the acetylene, with a portable stationary outfit with along with a cutting attachment separate cutting torch for the other. Equipment required that include with the settlement suitable goggles, the eye for the protection, glove to protect the hands, method of the light with the torch, wrenches to operate the various connections with the cylinder, regulator, and torches. Stationary welding equipment. Stationary welding equipment installed with the welding operation conducted within the fixed location. Oxygen acetylene will provide with the welding area outlined below. Oxygen is obtained with the number of the cylinders manifold with the equipment with the master regulator manifold control of the pressure with the flow of the gather. The oxygen is supplied with the welding station through the pipeline equipped with the station outlets. Figure 5.2, page 5.2. Shows the shut-off valves outlaid with the distribution system header and the regulator oxygen cylinders. 5.1 stationary oxygen cylinder manifold other equipment. 5.2 standard welding equipment to continue to acetylene tank manifold generator shut-off valve station regulator and trap. Acetylene with acetylene is obtained with the acetylene cylinder set up with the shown figure 5.3 the acetylene generator figure 5.4 acetylene with supply with the welding station with the pipeline equipped with the station outlets of the shown figure 5.2. A is the line valve, B is a release valve, 5 C is a filler plug, D is the header pipe, the E is the regulator, F is the flash arrestor chamber, G is the escape pipe, the H is the cylinder connection pipe, J is the check valve of the drain plug, and K is the acetylene cylinders. Figure 5.3 shows the stationary acetylene cylinder manifold other equipment. Alright, clockwork motor, 1.5-inch release valve, pressure control valve, carbon bind fill plug, pressure gauge, carbon hopper case, outlet valve, carbon discharge flow, water filling tunnel, hydraulic seal, motor driving weights, control lever, double acting check valve, educated paddle, water, output flow, 2-inch residual valve outlet. That's the acetylene generator output operating equipment. Alright, 5.3, portable welding equipment. Portably oxyacetylene with a welding outfit should consist of the oxygen cylinder, acetylene with a cylinder with a detached valve with regulator gouges and hoses, figure 5.5. The equipment must be temporarily secured with the floor with a mounted on all weld steel truck. The trucks are equipped with the platform to support large sizes of the cylinder. Cylinders are secured with the chains attached to the truck frame and metal box. Welded frame provides a storage space for the torch tips and glove and flexes, goggles, and number of wrenches. Okay, so figure 5.5 shows the portable oxyacetylene with welding and cutting equipment. Starting from the top, they're going 12 and working our way clockwise. Welding, torch clip, oxygen hose connection, acetylene hose connection, twin hose, and then we'll go to acetylene cylinder, acetylene hose, acetylene regulator, acetylene valve wrench, cylinder pressure gas, working pressure gas, cylinder pressure gauge, working pressure gauge, oxygen cylinder regulator, oxygen hose, spark lighter apparatus, oxygen cylinder. Alright, acetylene generator. Note, the acetylene generator equipment is not a standard item in the issue for the include with the manual for the information only. The acetylene fuel gas is composed with the carbon and hydrogen generated by the action of the calcium carbide, the gray-like stone-like substance, water, and generating unit. Acetylene is colorless but has a distinctive odor that can be easily detected. Mixture of the acetylene with the air containing 2 to 80% of the acetylene by volume will explode when ignited. However, the suitable welding equipment is proper precautions. Acetylene can be safely burned with oxygen, heating the welding cutting purpose. The acetylene will provide burn the oxygen, produce the oxygen acetylene flame from the inner cone tip at the temperature of approximately 6,300 degrees Fahrenheit for oxidizing flame, 5850 Fahrenheit for a neutral flame, and 5,700 for a carbonizing flame. General shown in Figure 5.4 for the common use of the commercial type of the single-rated 300-pound generator for the 300-pound calcium carbide, 300-gallon of water with the amount of material generated at 4.5 cubic feet of the acetylene per pound. The output of this lead, the load is approximately 300 cubic feet per hour at 4.5 hours. Double the rate with the generator at 300 pound with the finer size calcium carbide fed through the special hopper and will deliver 600 cubic feet with acetylene per hour at 2.5 hours. Caution: since considerable heat is given off, the reaction precautions must be taken to prevent excessive pressure with the generator, which might cause the fire explosion. In operation, generator calcium carbide is added to the water throughout the hopper mechanism of the rate with the maintained with the working pressure approximately at 15 psi. A pressure regulator with built-in with this equipment with the sludging consisting of a hydrated slack line set over the bottom of the generator. Remove the means of the sludge outlet. Acetylene cylinders. Acetylene stove with a free state under the pressure greater than 50 psi can break down with a heat shock, which will possibly explode under the pressure of 29.4 psi. Acetylene is self-explosive. Slightly shock can cause explosion simultaneously. Although acetylene is non-toxic and is an anesthetic and presents sufficiently high concentration, is an asphyxiating, replacing oxygen can produce suffocation. application. Acetylene is colorless, flammable gas composed of carbon, hydrogen, manufactured reaction, water, calcium carbide, slightly lighter than air. Acetylene burns in the air, intense hot, yellow, and luminous smoke flare. Acetylene is stable under low pressure and compressed at 15 psi to it becomes unstable. Heat shock can cause acetylene under the pressure to explode. Avoid exploding filling cylinders to heat surface radiators open and fire sparks in from a torch. Avoiding striking with the cylinder against the object, creating sparks to avoid spark or shock with the transport cylinders, and do not drag the roll or slide them on their face. Acetylene can be compromised with the cylinders when it dissolves with acetone at a pressure of up to 250 psi. For welding purposes, acetylene is contained in the 3 common cylinders with a capacity of 160, 100, and 300 cubic feet. Acetylene must have drawn off in the volume of greater than 1/7 of the cylinder rated capacity. Acetylene cylinders continue in order to decrease the size of the open space of the cylinder. Where the acetylene cylinders are filled with a porous material with the balsam wood and charcoal, corn pith, Portland cement. With the acetylene with a colorless flammable liquid is added to the cylinder until the 40% of the porous material is saturated with the porous material acts as a large sponge, absorbs the acetone, which absorbs the acetylene. In this process, the volume of acetone increases absorbs the acetylene, while the acetylene becomes a gas, decreases the volume. Shows the 5.6 shows the acetylene cylinder construction, removable metal cap, steel valve, safety fuse plug, monolithic filled with balsam wood or fire resistant material, 12 inches inside diameter, 40.5 inches tall, safety fuse plug. Or do not fill acetylene cylinders rate greater than 1/7 of their rated capacity, or about 275 cubic feet per hour, to prevent the drawing off of the acetone with consequently impairment of the welding quality, damage of the welding equipment. Do not draw acetylene with a cylinder with a continuum of the rates of the volumes greater than 1/7 of the rated capacity. Cylinders at 32.1 cubic feet per hour when more than 32.1 cubic feet per hour require that the cylinder manifold must be used. Acetylene cylinders are equipped with the safety plugs, which have a small hole through the center of the hole is filled with a metal alloy. Metal is approximately 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Increase with the 500 psi of the cylinder is overheated. The plug will melt, permit the acetone to escape before the dangerous pressure can be developed. The plug hole is too small to permit the flame to burn back in the cylinder as escaping acetylene is ignited. The brass acetylene cylinder valves have the square stainless steel valve with the stems of the shelf with the cylinder wrench open and closed when the cylinder is in use. All the valve threaded with the connection of the acetylene with the pressure regulator made by means of a union nut. The regulator inlet connection gland fits against the face of the threaded cylinder connection with the union nut, draws the two surfaces together. When the threads of the valve connections are damaged to the degree that will prevent the assembly of the regulator cylinder, should be marked with a set aside of the return manufacturer. Alright, warning. Acetylene with accumulated with a storage room with a confined with a space with a fire arrayed explosion for hazards. Acetylene cylinders should be checked with a soaping solution, leakage of the valve with a safe fuse plug. Protective metal cap that screws one over the valve to prevent damage from shipping to the storage. Acetylene, when used, the oxygen produces the highest flame temperature. Any of the fuel gases also have the most concentrated flame, but produces less gross heat, combustion, liquid petroleum gas, and synthetic gases. R5-6 oxygen production. General oxygen, colorless, tasteless, odorless gas, slightly heavier than air, non-flammable with support with combustion. Other elements for the free state of the oxygen. One or more of the common elements of the atmosphere is made approximately 21 parts oxygen, 78% of the nitrogen, for the remainder of the rare gas of the rusting ferrous metal with the discolorization, copper with the corrosion, aluminum, all due to the action of atmospheric oxygen, known as oxidation. Production of oxygen. Oxygen is obtained chemically, commercially, either by a liquid air process or an electrolytic process. In the liquid air process, the compressed and cooled, where the point where the gas becomes liquid, the temperature of liquid air rises with the nitrogen in the gas form and given off. So if the boiling point is lower than the liquid oxygen, the gas has separated with the further purified, compressed into the cylinder for use. Liquid air process is far the most widely used produced to produce oxygen. Alright, an electrolytic process. The water is broken down with the hydrogen. Oxygen is passed through the electrical current. Oxygen collects the positive terminal hydrogen and the negative terminal. Each gas is collected with the compressed into cylinders for use. Alright, caution. Always also refer to the oxygen. Always refer to the oxygen as oxygen, never a combustible, never as air. Combustible should be kept away from the oxygen, including the cylinder valve with the regulators, other hose apparatus. Oxygen and apparatus should not be handled with oil hands or oily glove. The pure oxygen will support the accelerated combustion of any material except for especially danger for the presence of the oil and grease. Oil and grease in the presence of the oxygen may spontaneously ignite, burn violently to expose. Oxygen should never be used with any tools or any of the purpose for which may compress is normally used. A typical oxygen cylinder shown in Figure 5.7 made with steel has the capacity of 220 cubic feet with a pressure of 20,000 pounds and a temperature of 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Attached equipment provided by the oxygen supplier consists of the outlet valve with a removable metal cap with the production over the valve with a low metal point, melting point, safety fuse, plug disc. The cylinder is fabricated with a single complaint with a high-grade steel so that it will have no seam with the heated treat, but they achieve the maximum strength. But the higher pressure of the oxygen cylinder go, the extent of the testing prior to release of the work must be periodically tested thereafter. Figure 5 shifts over the oxygen cylinder construction, movable metal cap, tube and bronze valve, safety plug and disc, compressed steel neck ring, oxygen capacity cylinder 220 cubic feet at 2,000 pounds per square inch, pressure 70 degrees Fahrenheit, water capacity approximately 26.50 cubic inches, the 8.5 is inside diameter, 51 inches tall, minimum wall thickness 260 thousandths of an inch. Oxygen acetylene regulators. Generally, the gas compressor for the oxygen acetylene cylinders have the pressure of the high oxygen acetylene welding regulators produce pressure for the control of the flow of the gas of the cylinder. Pressure for any oxygen cylinder can be as high as 2,200 psi, which is reduced with the working pressure of 1 to 25 psi. Pressure acetylene with the acetylene cylinder can have as high as 250 psi. Must be reduced the working pressure to 1 to 12 psi. With the gauge pressure regulator automatically deliver constant volume of the gas of the torch, adjusted working pressure of the regulators for the oxygen and acetylene with the liquid petroleum fuel gases are different construction. They must be used with only for gas for which of them is designed. Most regulators use the single stage, two stage type. Check valve with the install of between the torch hose of the regulators to prevent flashback through through regulator. Single stage oxygen regulator reduces the cylinder pressure gas working pressure in one step. Single stage oxygen regulator mechanism has the nozzle for which the high pressure passes to the valve seat line close to the nozzle with balancing the springs. Some types of relief valve with the inner filter and to exclude dust and dirt pressure. Gauges are provided to show pressure of the cylinder and pipeline working pressure. Should the cylinder gauge deliver pressure gauge, adjusting screw hose connection bushing, adjusting screw compensating spring, rubber diaphragm, stir up, high pressure inlet, glass wool filter, nozzle seat and holder, and seat spring. Alright, note, in operation, working pressure falls to the cylinder pressure of the valve occurs gradually as the gas is withdrawn. For the reason the working pressure might be adjusted with the intervals during the welding operation when using single-stage oxygen regulator. The oxygen regulator controls to reduce the oxygen pressure from any standard with a commercial oxygen cylinder containing pressure of up to 3,000 psi with a high pressure pH, which is only on the inlet side of the regulator, graduated at 0 to 3,000 psi. Low working pressure gauge, which is the outlet side of the regulator, graduated from 0 to 500 psi. Your operation of a single-stage oxygen regulator with the regulator consists of a flexible diaphragm controlled with the knee of the valve with a high-pressure zone, working zone, and compression spring with adjusting screw with the compensate of the pressure of the gas against diaphragm. The knee of the valve with the side of the diaphragm exposed with a high gas pressure with the compression spring with adjusting screw, or opposite side of the zone vented into the atmosphere. The oxygen enters the regulator with a high-pressure inlet connection passes through the glass wool filter, moving the dust and dirt with the receipt with the closed off with the nozzle that is not raised over the adjusting screw. If the pressure is applied with the adjusting spring, turning the adjusting screw which bears down with the rubber diaphragm. The diaphragm passes downward on the stirrup to overcome the pressure from the compensating spring. When the stirrup is forced downward, the passage of the nozzle is open oxygen and it passes through the regulator outlet with a hose of the torch contains a set pressure must be maintained in a low pressure chamber of the regulator so that the oxygen will continue to be forced with the orifice of the torch even if the torch need is open and the pressure is indicated with the working pressure gauge of the regulator depends on the position of the regulator. Adjusting screw pressure increase turning of the adjusting screw with the right decrease with the turning of the screw to the left. Regulators used at stations which gas or piped oxygen manifold, acetylene manifold, acetylene generators only have one low pressure gauge because of the pipeline pressure, usually at 15 psi. The acetylene approximately 200 psi for oxygen. Two-stage oxygen regulator is similar operation. One-stage regulator reduced pressure for the two-step of the high pressure side. Pressure reduced from the cylinder pressure. Intermediate pressure for the low pressure side of the pressure is reduced. Immediate pressure for the working pressure because of the two-stage pressure control. Working pressure held constant with the pressure adjustment during the welding operation is not required. Figure 5.9 shows the two-stage oxygen regulator. Your acetylene regulator. Acetylene should never be used at low pressures exceeding 15 psi. Rather control acetylene with the pressure of the standard commercial cylinder with the containment with the pressures up to 500 psi cylinder. Acetylene cylinders regulated the design generally the same, but the oxygen regulator will not withstand such high pressure. High pressure gauge on the inlet side of the regulator graduated from 0 to 500 psi. The low pressure gauge on the outlet side of the regulator graduates 0 to 30 psi. Acetylene should be not used in pressures exceeding 15 psi. Alright, 5-9. Oxyacetylene welding torch. Generally, the oxyacetylene welding torch is used to mix oxygen and acetylene in different proportions to control volume of these gases burn at the welding tip of which produce the required the type of the flame the torch consists, handle, and body to contain with the hose connection for the oxygen fuel gas of the torch will the two needle valve adjusting flue over the oxygen, one over one the oxygen, one acetylene with the mixing head with the addition of the two tubes, one over the oxygen, other acetylene nipples of the attachment of the hoses and tip of the handle of the tubes handle with the seamless hard brass, copper, nickel, alloy, stainless steel. For description, different size types over the tips over the paragraph 510. Types of torches, two different general types of welding torches, the low pressure injector type and equal pressure type. Oxyacetylene welding torch continued in low pressure injector type. The acetylene pressure with less than 1 psi. Jet high pressure oxygen used to produce the efficient action effect of the draw required amount of acetylene in any portion of the oxygen flow with protect relatively change of the acetylene flow of the use of the proportion. Two gases remain constant. Accomplished design with a mixture of the torch appropriate with the injector principle. Welding tips may or may not have the separate injectors designed integrally with each tip. Alright, figure 510 shows the mixing head injector type welding torch. You show the tip, the injector nose, mixing head, oxygen needle valve, mixing head nut, acetylene needle valve handle, oxygen acetylene tube. The equal pressure torch is designed to operate with the equal pressure for the oxygen and acetylene ranges from 1 to 15 psi, but the torch has certain advantages. Low pressure type can be readily adjusted. Single equal pressure used for each of the gas torches. Suspectable flashbacks. Figure 511 shows the equal pressure type general purpose welding torch. Number 1 copper torch, mixing head nut, torch head handle, acetylene tube, oxygen needle valve, rear end, acetylene needle valve, oxygen hose, acetylene hose connection knot, oxygen hose gland, oxygen needle valve stem assembly, oxygen needle valve body. Our welding tips are made with a hard-drawn electrolytic copper with a 95% copper, 5% tellurium. They are made of various styles for the type of the head. Some have one piece of either signal orifice, number of orifices, diameter of the type. Typically, over the difference from the order, control quantity of the heat with the type of the flame. The tip of the shaft is designated number arranged according to the individual manufacturer system. Generally, smaller the number, the smaller typically of orifice. Mixture frequently provided with a tight interior assembly mixture with the correct flow with a mixture with the gas. Each size tip of the tip mixture with assembly. The mixture is assembled. The tip of which has been drilled and screwed out on torch head with a universal type of the mixture, separate units which can be used with the tip of the various types. Alright, hoses used to make the connection between the regulator and the torch are made especially for the purpose of the hose are built with a withstand high internal pressure for this growing non-porous light with the flexibility with the permit easy manipulation and the rubber to use the manufacturer hose with the chemical to treat with the removal of free and sulfur to avoid possible spontaneous combustion. Hose is impaired with a prolonged exposure to light. Caution: hose should never be used in for one gas if previously used for another. Hose identification composition: North America oxygen hose green, acetylene hose red. Europe blue is for oxygen, orange is for acetylene. Black sometimes is used for oxygen. Hose is a rubber tube with a braid with a wrap cutting of the on reinforcement rubber covering. A heavy-duty welding cutting operation requiring 1/4 to 1/2 inch internal diameter. Hose 3 to 5 plies of braided wraps and reinforcement are used. 1 ply is used at 1/8 or 3/16 of the hose light torches. Alright, hoses provided the connection at each end of the made with the connection for the respective regular outlet of the torch inlet connection prevented the dangerous interchange of acetylene oxygen hose. All thread fittings are used for the acetylene hookup of the left hand, with all thread fittings of the oxygen hookup are right-handed. Nuts also are placed with the acetylene fitting to prevent mix-up. Alright, 511 hose continue welding, cutting into the obtainable to single hose each of the gas for the hose bound together the length of the common other rubber jacket. Later type that prevents hose clinking but becoming tangled during the welding operation. Alright, 512, setup of equipment. Warning, always have the suitable fire extinguisher with a hand doing when suitable. The welding, cutting equipment is important. All operation performed systematically in order to avoid mistakes, possible trouble with the setting of the procedure given them through the A through D below. Will assure the safety of the operator apparatus. Cylinders, warning, do not stand facing cylinder valve, oxygen, acetylene, or their other compressed gases when opening them. Place oxygen, acetylene cylinder left of the floor if they are not mounted with the truck. They tie them firmly with the workbench post of the wall. Other secure anchor prevent them from knocked down or pulled over. Remove the valve protective cat. 3, crack the both cylinder valve with the opening of the first acetylene, but then the oxygen. Slightly install the blowout for an instant to blow out any of the dirt and foreign matter that have accumulated during the shipment and storage. 4, close the valve, wipe off the connection seats with a clean cloth. Pressure regulators. Check on the regulator fitting with the dirt objection. Always check with the threads of the cylinder regulators for imperfections. Connect the acetylene regulator with the acetylene regulator, oxygen regulator with the oxygen cylinder. Use either regulator with a wrench and close fitting of the wrench, tightening the connection not sufficient to prevent leak. Check for the hose for burns or nicks or bad fittings. Connect the red hose to the acetylene regulator, green hose to the oxygen regulator. Screw the connection tightly to ensure leak-proof seating. Note the acetylene hose connection left-hand threads. Warning, it's not necessary to blow out the acetylene hose due to in well-ventilated places with the freest spark of the flame and the other sources. Release with the regulator screw to avoid damage to the regulator with the gauge to open the cylinder valve slowly. Read high-pressure gauge to check with the cylinder valve gas pressure below without the oxygen hose burning. Turning the regulator screw into the release of the regulator screw. Flashback suppressor must be attached to torch whenever possible. Hard torch, connect the red acetylene hose with the torch need with the valve which is stamped AC flashback suppressor. Connect the green oxygen hose of the torch needle valve with the stamped OX flashback suppressor. Test all connections for leaks in regulator torch valve with turning both regulator screws in which torch needle valve is closed. Use the soap and water solution for the test valve leaks for the connection. Tighten the replace closure connection with leaks are found. Release the regulator screw with the after testing. Drain both hose lines by opening torch needle valves. Slightly tip the nut over the tip and press the tip of it into the mixing head. Tighten the hand or adjust the tip with the proper angle. Secure adjustment with the tightening with the nut wrench. Warning: purge both acetylene oxygen lines prior to igniting the torch. Failure to do this causes serious injury and personnel damage to the equipment. Alright, your adjustment of working pressure of adjusting acetylene pressure with the opening acetylene needle valve of the torch turning regulator screw is right with adjusting acetylene regulator required pressure for the tip of the size used in figure tables 1 and 5.1 and 5.2. Close the needle's valve, adjust the oxygen working pressure in the same manner. 5.1 show the low pressure injector type torch. 5.2 show the balance pressure torch. Alright, shut down. Shut down the welding apparatus. Shut off the gas, choke the acetylene valve with the oxygen valve with the torch. Then close the acetylene oxygen cylinder valve to drain the regulator's hose and following procedures. Open the torch acetylene valve with the gas stops flowing. Gauges read 0. Then close the valve. Open the torch oxygen valve to drain the oxygen regulator and hose. When the gas stops flowing, gauge reads 0. Close the valve. When above operation, perform properly. Both high and low pressure gauges on the acetylene and oxygen regulator will register 0. Release the tension on both regulator screws, turning the screw into the left until it rotates freely. Coil the hose and kink them with suspend with a suitable holder and hanger and avoid upsetting the cylinders to which they are attached. Alright, 5.14, regulator manifold malfunction correction. Leaking the gas between regulator seat and nozzle is a principal problem in cutting with the regulators indicate with a gradual increase of the pressure. Working pressure gauge, adjusting screw is fully released. In position after adjustment, the defect is called the creeping regulator, is then caused by bad valve seats form matter lodged between the seat and nozzle. Alright, warning. Regulators will leak it with leakage gas between the regulator set by the seat and the nozzle must be replaced immediately. Avoid the damage of other parts of the regulator. Ensure personnel with acetylene regulators leakage of the particular damage because the acetylene with the high pressure and the hose explosion hazard. Leakage gas is described above and can be corrected with the outline below. Remove the place in the seat with a worn and cracked or otherwise damaged. If the malfunction is covered with the following with dirt and other foreign material, clean the seat with the nozzle thoroughly. Blow out any of the dust or dirt with a valve chamber. The procedures for the remove of the valve seat of the nozzle will vary with the maker design. Broken buckle gauge tubes, distorted buckle diaphragms are usually called with the backfire at the torch. Leaks across the regulator seat for the failure to release of the regulator adjusting screw fully before opening the cylinder valve. The defective board-on tubes or gauges the impact with improper action. Gauges escaping gas from the gauge cases. Gauges defective portion burden tubes should be removed and replaced with the new gauges. Satisfactory repair cannot be made without special equipment. Our buckle distorted diaphragms cannot be adjusted properly, should be replaced with the new ones. The rubber diaphragms can be replaced easily. Remove them in case of the vice wrench. Metal diaphragms are sometimes soldered to valves case with replacement factory spare repair shop just. And such repairs no attempts are not to be attempted to anyone unfamiliar with the work. Our 5.15 torch malfunction correction warning: defects of oxyacetylene to welding torches which source of the gas leaks must be corrected immediately. If they result flashbacks and backfires, result in injury to the operator and damage of the working apparatus. General improved function of the welding torch usually do one or more found causes: leak valve leaks in the mixing head, scored out around welding tip, the orifice, clogged tips or tubes or tips, damaged inlet connection threads. Corrective measures of these common torches are described below. Leaky valves, bent, worn valve that should be replaced with damaged seats. Loose packing corrected with tightening packing nut. Installing new packing Packaging, tightening of the backing of the nut. The caution of the work should be done with the manufacturer special because special reamers are required of truing these seats. Leak-wise, mixing head of the indicated pop out with the flame by emission spark accompanied with the squealing noise. Leaks in the mixing head will cause improper mixing, oxygen settling, so on, causing flashback. Cover the torch head. The head suddenly become very hot. Prayer rimming out truly mixing head seat. Scored or out round tip forces, tips orifice, tips in condition cause the flame to be irregular, must be replaced. Alright, clogged or tube tips. The carbon deposit caused with a flashback backfire presence of a foreign material entered within the tubes through the hose of the clogged tubes. Tubes or tips required with greater working pressure will be needed to produce the flame required. Flame produced will be distorted. Torch will be disassembled with the tips. Mixing head valve of the hose can be cleaned out with cleaned out with compressed air pressure at 20 to 30 psi. Tip or mixing head should be cleaned either by cleaning or drilling off soft copper brass wire, then blowing out the compressed air with the cleaning of the drills. Should be approximately one drill size smaller than the tip of the orifice. Avoid enlarging orifice during cleaning. A warning: dangerous inlet connection threads may cover the fire's ignition from the leaking gas and result of the injury. Welding operator damage equipment. And that is damage inlet connection threads. Leaks due to the damaged inlet connection threads can be detected. Opening the cylinder valve, keeping the needle of the valve closed, causing the regulator pressure to drop. Also, if the threads are damaged, hose connection and the torsion inlet will be difficult and impossible to tighten. To correct this defect, the threads should be recut and the hose connection thoroughly cleaned. Section 2, oxyacetylene equipment. Oxyacetylene cutting equipment. Testing.